Good day everyone and welcome back to data analysis class. Today we'll be focusing on how you can import data from various sources into your Power BI desktop, and also how we can work with Power Query before moving the transform data into Power BI. Quickly, from our previous class, I've introduced us to the environment of Power BI. Now, what we'll be doing today is we'll be trying to load the data into Power BI. Now, how do we load data into Power BI? Basically, what we do is that you get data from the home ribbon tab. You can click on get data. Now you notice you have a few listed here from Excel workbook, from Power BI dataset, from CSV, from the web. And if you click more, now you wait for it while it tries to bring out more. You could also connect from an SQL database and so much various data sources that will be brought up very soon. Now here we have them. The list is endless. We have from CSV, from JSON, from a SharePoint folder, from an SQL, from Azure, from Dynamic 365, from Google Analytics, from LinkedIn Sale Management, from QBook, QuickBook, and the list is enormous, among of which we'll be exploring some few in this class quickly. Now, the first one we'll be working with, which is the most common, is an Excel workbook. Now, how do we import an Excel workbook into Power BI? How we do that is basically the first thing we are going to do is that we'll click on import Excel workbook. Now we click on connect, and once we click on connect, I already have on my desktop a folder called class, which has a record, a shop record. Now I click on open. Once you do that, now doing this, now you're trying to load an Excel into Power BI. Now this particular dialog box you can see is called the navigator. Why do we call it navigator? This is where your data set is tries to find the various columns, the various tables within the worksheet, and within any URL or any data source you're connecting to get the data. Now the first thing you would want to do is to click on the table, and you notice you can now click on either load or transform data or cancel. But remember, at this point we want to find a way by which we can find do some analysis with this data even before moving it, because it might contain some useless rows that we don't need, or it might contain some rows with duplicate, with missing values. All these are things we might want to work with before moving it into Power BI for data analytics properly. Now, how do we go that? So I would not advise us to click on load unless you have done that prior to now, of which this is an introductory class. So you click on transform data. Once you click on transform data, the next thing that comes up here is a special feature which is also applicable to Excel, Microsoft Excel. Now this is called the Power Query Editor. What is a Power Query Editor? This is where you can transform and do some basic transformation to your Excel before moving it into Power BI. Now, since the main focus of this class is just to show you how you can move or how you can load data via a Microsoft Excel workbook. Now, assuming we have transformed this data as it is now, and we want to load this into Power BI, all you just have to do is at the top side here, you will click on close and apply. Now, this is an environment we have to study subsequently in a class. We'll have to study the Power Query editor. We'll have to see what are the uses, what we can do, some basic functionalities we can do with Power Query. For now, I don't want it, so I'm going to cancel this. Now it says yes, so I'm going to cancel that. Now, the next thing I would want us to do is that I would also want us to find, try to see how we can load a data from a CSV file. A CSV file is more or less like an Excel file, but a more sophisticated version of it as a CSV file. Quickly, you click on Get Data. Once you click on Get Data, now it tries to bring out the dialog box where you can get data from in various sources. Now you notice the second option here says from a text/CSV, so we can click on that and click on Connect. Now I have on my download a folder, is an Excel workbook which is saved as a CSV file. So you click on it. All these documents will be sent to you via the email or via the platform. Now, this is a data set which is for salary of various data scientists, which is in CSV format. So I'm just going to click open and wait for it. You notice it's trying to load up. Now, what it does here now, it brings us into the navigator bar again. Now here you notice you could see the name of the file .csv, and as I earlier explained, you would like to transform your data. Now you will have to move it into the Power Query editor, and once you are okay with the data as it is now, so for instance we are okay with these columns and the rows, you can just click on close and apply. Once you click on close and apply, it moves it all the way from Power Query editor into the Power BI desktop. Now it loads the model and tries to find a way to load all the corresponding data into Power BI, and now it has successfully loaded into Power BI. If you notice, we have all the columns here. All the columns that are found inside the workbook are here in the field pane, because in our last class I told us that the field pane stores all our data, that is the table of each column will be located in the field pane. Now quickly, the other time I cancelled it, we can go back and go to my desktop. You click on classes for the Excel. Now you want to open this and you want to open this folder. You wait for it while it tries to do that. Now you select the worksheet you want to, and you want to load it directly, because I want to have them all loaded into my Power BI desktop. Now it's loading it, it's trying to create the model. It has successfully loaded it. Now you notice we have two records from this field pane. Also, you might decide to work with a folder. Take for instance, you have a case whereby a folder, you have a folder that has the records from each of your stores or from your organization from different locations. Now, you might want to work with such kind of folders. How do you work with it? Because within the folder, you might have more than 3-4 records and you want to combine them and use them for further analysis. How can you do that? Now, quickly, if you click on get data, you can notice here we have where this is folder. You click on folder, click on connect. Once you do that, it asks you for the part where you can get it can get the folder on your personal computer. So you definitely want to browse, and I have a folder on my desktop that says folder 1. Now, what I'm going to do is within folder 1, there are some Excel files inside. I'm going to say OK and click on OK from here. Now, if you notice, you have the month of August, June, July, and September. And we have one other file. Within the worksheet, I have just 3 months, which are the August, July, and September. But you notice that we have a catch. What is a catch? A catch or a metadata from the month of July still located in the folder. So we might want to find a way of removing that. So you click on the transform data. Once you click on the transform data, it opens up the Power Query editor. Now, the Power Query editor, you will notice that the folder that we brought into Power Query editor has various attributes such as the content, the name, the extension, the date accessed, the date modified, the date created. These are all the columns that are located in the folder. Now, note that our data, firstly, the first thing we want to do here is that we want to remove the catch that is located at the bottom here, which we don't want because we just have 3 months from our workbook. Now, we want to click on the home ribbon tab. You will see where it says remove column. We want to remove the bottom column of 1 because we just want 1 from there. We'll click on OK. Now we have removed that. Now the next thing we want to do is to access the data in each of these folders. How do we access it? So we want to click on this, right click on the content, because the content carries the data itself. Every other thing here is just showing attributes that are associated with the folder. Now you want to drop every other column so that you are left with just the content. The next thing you would want to do is that you would want to click on the combine file, which is at the top right of the content. Once you click on it, now you will notice it's trying to create some attributes. Now here it's telling us we have work, we have the various sheets in each of the table that dynamically runs through each column is sheet 1. That is, there's sheet 1 in July, sheet 1 in August, and sheet 1 in September. Now, we want to transform that further. You right click on it and click on transform data. Now, what it's trying to do is trying to bring out to evaluate some queries and bring out the Power Query editor. If you can't find it, just check your navigation bar. Now here, if you don't mind, you will notice that the Power Query editor itself has some functionalities that it has been doing within this place. It's called the apply steps. The query it has been taking are called the applied step. In subsequent video, I will explain the concept of Power Query editor to us. But for now, if you notice, these are some steps that are being taken to achieve this. Now, coming to our data set, you notice we earlier said that each of our column has just sheet 1. So we notice we're having some extra data, so we want to drop that. So quickly you come to items. Now we want to just have the sheet 1, so we'll uncheck all and check just sheet 1 and say okay, so that it removes every other column that does not correlate with sheet 1 as the table, as the sheet name in the Excel workbook. The next thing we want to do is that I told us earlier that every folder or every document is associated with some properties. Now, those properties are what we could call some metadata. Now, here we have the name, we have the data, we have the item, we have the kind, and we have the hidden. Now, the kind shows us the kind of data we are dealing with, which is a sheet, and the item are all sheet 1. Now the next thing is the table, which is our major focus here. The tables is our major focus because we want to deal with the data in the table. So you would want to select the table and left click and click on drop other column, that is remove other columns. Now it has removed every other single column. The next thing you would also want to do is to expand it by clicking on the top right column here. Once you click on it, you would want to uncheck use origins as column prefix. Then click on OK. Now, why it does that, it has finally expanded the data in all the columns, in all the workbooks within our folder. You notice that the first row says column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5, all the way down, of which the main column names are ID1, other ID, ship date, ship mode, customer ID. All these are what are the attributes that should be on our columns. So what we'll do is, on the home ribbon tab, you will notice on the transform section here, you will notice that we have where it says use first row as headers. You click on it. Now it makes every single first row in our data the headers of our column. Also, you will discover that we added different columns, that is different workbooks into our main Power Query editor now. So each of the table still has the column names that begins each of them, and the only way we can drop them is to select maybe probably a row ID. Now when we select the items in a row ID, now we notice this has plenty attributes. We can't use that. You may decide to come down to something like country. Now country, we only have the United States, so we can uncheck attributes for country, so that we have a unique table that now has a single row of all our data. So with this, you can now click on close and apply, and once you click on close and apply, all the data from the Excel workbook now and from the folder are being loaded into Power Query. Now into Power BI from Power Query. Now you notice here we have a new table which says folder 1 as stated in our table. But note before we go into any other session that this particular feature now is only applicable when there is the same numbers of rows and columns and the same headers in each of the Excel workbook. If it doesn't have the same column or the same column and row names, this will not work. Okay, now with this, you will notice that we have been able to work with three major ways of loading data, which are the Excel, the CSV, and the folder. We'll be moving into another one quickly, which is from the web. On my browser, I already have a URL that contains a website that has the countries, the latitude, the longitude, and the name. So I'm going to pick this URL, Control C on my keyboard, and I come back into my Power BI and click on Get Data. Now, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be getting data, that particular table, from the internet. Now, for this to work, take note, you have to have an internet connection on your computer. So for you to get that, you click on Others from Get Data. You will notice it is the first one. Now the first one here says Web. You click on Connect. Once you do that, it asks for the URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. That is the web address of the site you might want to get data from. So we have copied it, Ctrl+V on my keyboard. I will drop data, that is the URL, into the dialog box there. Now I click on OK. Once I click on OK, now it tries to initiate the various models that are required to connect the data. And now it's already popping up the navigation bar. If you notice, I gave it a URL. The URL has a table, it has a HTML code, a text. Now you could analyze the text, you could do some things with it, but what is our focus here is the table. So we're going to be clicking on the table. Make sure you select the table 1, then you click on Transform Data. Once you click on Transform Data, it opens up the Power Query Editor. Now the Power Query Editor, within it you will notice you have the country, the latitude, the longitude, and the name. And if you come back to our browser, you will notice that is what you have from this table. So now in this place, we notice that we have everything as we want. So quickly we could just click on Close and Apply. Once you click on Close and Apply, it loads every single row and column in the data table into Power BI. Now it has successfully loaded it. Now you notice we have a new table that has the name table 1. If we expand it, you will notice we have country, latitude, longitude, and name. So we have successfully used 4 different methods to get data into our Power BI environment. So let's see. The next thing we want to do is I have been using Power Query. We'll be seeing how we can explain some basic things that happens in Power Query. So I'm going to go back. For me to get back to my Power Query editor, I can select the first data we loaded, which is the store record. And once I select it here, I click on my home and I click on transform data. Now this will take me back to my Power Query editor. Now when I get to the Power Query editor, I want to just introduce you into this environment. We have majorly the home, the transform, the add column, the view, the tool, and the help. So the home tab contains some activities. Just majorly all these titles I mentioned, they are titles that they are associated with the ways you can transform your data. Now, the first thing we want to do here is that we want to see if we can do some analysis with the data we have. This is our data now. Now, by my right hand side here, you see you see a title called query. This query are the steps Power Query takes to initiate our query, our attributes or the steps we take. Now, the right hand side here, you could see where it says applied step. Applied steps are the actual steps we take, which we might decide to reverse. But the queries are the things it has Power Query does to make sure that whatever command we give is being applied. Now, within the Power Query, once you select a column like this, like here we have the customer ID, you could do some things with it. There are some functionalities you could do, of which if you left click on it, you could remove it. Now, if you remove it, it means you don't want it, so it has left the table. And if you feel like you needed it back, you can come to the applied step and click on remove column. You cancel it. Once you cancel it, it brings back the column that you removed. The next thing you could do with it is you could want to remove every other column except this column that is selected. So what you do is you click on remove other columns. So now you have just this column, but I feel like that's bad, so I can uncheck it. Now it brings back every other thing that I did before. The next thing is you could remove duplicates from column. Now take for instance, you want to keep a unique list of every single customer on your table, and you have duplicates of their customer name or customer ID. Now you could just say remove duplicates. Once you remove duplicates, now it creates a new column that has a unique list of all the customer orders. So I might decide to check that, uncheck that. Now I'm back to the original one. The next thing I might want to do is I might want to remove something like I want to remove errors, and I want to change the types. Now, what do I mean by type? Take note, each of our column has a data type. The data types are the kind of data located in the column. Majorly, we have the decimal numbers, the fixed decimals, the whole numbers, the percentage, the date and time, the date, the time zone, the duration, the text, the true or false, and the binary. All these are types of data we have, but in each of these column we have different types of data. Take for instance here, this is a date. That is why if you notice the sign at the top right here shows a date. Now this the ship mode is a text. That is why you have a text. And if you move across the whole data set, you will notice that when you got to something like sales, now you notice you have the decimal type. That is the decimal type. You have also the whole number types. From the quantity here, you will have the whole number types. Now all these are types of data. You might want to change the type of data that is associated to a particular column. How do you do that? You can simply just click on, first you could click on the icon that is very close to the name of the column, and you could just change it by making it says, do I want to change? Yes, I could say current step. Now you notice I have an error. That means there is an error there, so I might want to revert that my step. Now the next thing I might want to do is I might want to say, okay, this is presently I want to make it a date column, so I could make it a date column. Now I have my customer date as a date column. I might want to make my ship mode as a text. I might want to go down to this part and make the quantity as whole numbers, because I have whole numbers, my sales as decimal numbers. All this, what I'm just trying to do here now is that I am changing the types of each column. That is the type of data that each column contains, basically. So with this, you will notice that there are some attributes you could do with a single column. Now the next thing before we round up this class is, what can you do when you have two columns selected? Quickly, if you click on the first column and you press and hold your shift and click on the second column and left click, now you will notice you have something like merge column. Once you click on it, now what do I want to do from here? I want to merge two columns together to make a table. Probably you have the name and you have an ID, and you want to make combine the name and the ID together, or whatever case study you might want to use it. What you have to do is just select the both row, or you could have multiple rows such as 3, 4 and above. Now you click on merge columns. Now you will be asked on what kind of separators do you want to use within it. Is it just a space? Is it a column? Is it an equal sign, a quotation, a tab? But for this, I might want to use something like a custom. I might want to use something like an art to separate it. Now the next thing is you could want to name this your new column, but since I don't want to name it, you can just leave it as merge. Now okay, I would use that to show us something else. Now you could click on OK. Once you do that, you now notice I have a new column that is being added here as merged, and you notice we have the two columns that we earlier discussed. The two columns have been put together, and there is an @ sign that brings both together, because I selected custom as an @ Now that brings me to the part that I can right click here and do something like a rename, because you might want to rename this to something like combine. Now that means I can rename a column. That's why I didn't do it from the other side. So thank you very much. With this, basically we have been able to cover a quick recap of what we are able to cover here. Is basically We are able to cover how to load data from an Excel, from a CSV, from a folder, from the web, and a basic introduction to the Power Query editor and how we can use it for some basic functionalities. Thank you very much, and see you in the next class.